Whether you call it cockpit or crew resource management, the objective of CRM is to increase pilot proficiency in the human factors aspects of aviation. Historically, the emphasis in pilot training has been to develop technical knowledge and flying skills. The belief was that flight crews would then integrate this information and training to arrive at correct decisions during flight operations. Today, we realize that teaching technical skills isn't enough, and the aviation industry must also address the human element of flying. Skills involving effective communication, decision-making, situational awareness, and workload management must play a significant role in training pilots and flight crews. The lack of these skills has had a tremendous impact on the number of aviation accidents. It's estimated that human factors contribute significantly to approximately 80% of all commercial and general aviation accidents. An increasing emphasis on CRM training is one way the aviation community is focusing on this issue. CRM has been an important element in Part 121 airline training for many years. Regulatory requirements will eventually mandate all air carriers, including most Part 135 operators, to provide CRM training to flight crews. CRM programs continue to expand in corporate flight departments as well as in the general aviation environment where human factors training is being implemented. CRM principles are even being applied to support groups such as dispatchers, aviation maintenance technicians, and ground crews. United Airlines has one of the most extensive human factors training programs in the world. The ideas and techniques which are the foundation of this program are applicable to all areas of aviation, and an exploration of United's methods may lead to a better understanding of CRM concepts. An approach to flight training which incorporates CRM and programs which are tailored to specific flight environments may increase flight safety throughout the aviation community. The goal is to reduce the number of human factors-related accidents. United Airlines is achieving this goal through their program called CLR, Command, Leadership, Resource Management.
Why does the pilot land at the wrong airport? I mean, the airplane's working fine. What goes on? That's human factors.
And one day, things worked out. That error chain just worked out to where they had an accident or incident.
From 1980 to 1990, 127 hull losses around the world. 95 of them were preventable. They're human factors accidents. To me, that's absolutely inexcusable.
How can we prevent this from happening in the future? What can we do differently? Then it all gives us a much better understanding and knowledge to build on.
The ultimate goal, that there be no human factors caused accidents at all.
There was a lot of concern about accidents, and United's interest in crew resource management developed in the late 70s, along with the interest evidenced by the FAA and NASA, who was doing research on flight deck human factors. We had an unfortunate accident in 1978 with a DC-8 on final approach to Portland, which ran out of fuel. When that occurred, it was very hard to explain, and there were many human factors aspects in that accident. Therefore, the company, along with the union, the Airline Pilots Association, and outside consultants, developed a program to address the human factors aspects of effective cockpit interaction. This program is called Command, Leadership, Resource Management, and has been in effect at United Airlines since 1981.
CLR exists, and we consider it important, and obviously the industry considers it important now because it addresses safety. Now, historically, we train pilots, all airlines train pilots on technical skills, mechanical skills. How well you shoot an approach was addressed in a technical sense. And if something needed improvement, More time was given in the simulator. More instruction was given. But what was addressed was technical skills. You know, prioritizing your task in the cockpit, doing things in the right sequence, doing things in a more efficient manner, but always in a mechanical way. When it became obvious in 1978, and a few incidents prior to that, and I'm thinking of the Tenerife incident with two 747s colliding, and I'm thinking of United Airlines Portland incident, DC-8, running out of fuel. What became obvious was that we had technically proficient pilots, but yet, in spite of that, something failed. Something failed that created disaster. Something failed that was not safe. It was determined that the failure was a crew failure. It was a human interaction failure. It involved skills that the aviation industry had not been addressing.
CLR was developed here at United Airlines with the sole goal in mind of safety.
We have put considerable effort into the development of operationally relevant material for our crews. We want them to have information which will be relevant to their operation, which will be understandable, and which will be usable. We know that CLR creates two things that are important. Creates a common language, so that when we're using the words and the phrases in CLR, everyone knows what we're talking about. For example, at United Airlines, if I say to you I'm uncomfortable, we know that's a cue for us to start talking about further information. We also know that CLR creates with it certain operational expectations so that our crews know what's expected of them. And those expectations and the common language are incorporated into all of our courses.
CLR revolves around a core document, a core of 9 elements. And those elements come under the headings, the general headings of command, leadership, and resource management. There are 3 elements under command, 3 under leadership, and 3 under resource management. Captain's authority is, where we start with that is the mandate through FARs. The captain, the pilot in command, is in charge of the overall safety of the flight. That includes the efficiency, how well things are done, as well as what is done.
Leadership skills will change throughout a flight. Sometimes a captain needs to be possibly more controlling, absolutely decisive. And at other times, a good captain can display skills of delegating workload, delegating some authority. A good captain, a good leader is one who can oversee the whole picture and can manage well.
The captain is the captain is the final authority. The captain will make the final decision, but he or she needs all the input he or she can get from the other crew members. We teach them in the CLR course to advocate, to inquire, if they're uncomfortable, to speak up about something, if they feel they have some information, to give it readily to the captain. This wasn't always the case prior to CLR.
The captain's responsibility to solicit input, be sensitive to input, concerns, knowledge that other crew members may have, perhaps are reluctant to bring it out, but to still get that information out. Some people have said that in response to the question, what is the captain's job? I say, well, the captain's job is to gather information and then act upon the information. And when I've heard people ask, what is the co-pilot's job or another crew member's job? In the same context, the answer that comes back often is, well, the co-pilot's job is to provide information. And somewhere during that discussion, the question may be asked, well, then what makes a good co-pilot? A good co-pilot would be someone who provides the right information. And the best co-pilots would be the ones who provide the right information at the right time.
One of the things that our pilots do, our captains do very well, is establish a good crew climate, saying that they're not perfect in the airplane. And if you see something that I'm not doing correctly, or that's not part of our standard operating procedure, then query me, ask me, talk to me.
Open communication. One of the best ways to quell some of the stress and pressures we feel, I think, is to openly communicate it. I think a lot of pilots might tend to feel that to admit that they are succumbing to stress, feeling the pressures of stress, I think they may view that as a weakness. With CLR, we're trying to get the point across. It in no way is admitting to any weakness. In fact, not recognizing it, not letting the other pilots in on it would be a sign of weakness.
The first thing that comes to mind when we're talking about stress or stress management is fatigue. And that fatigue may be a result of something that's happened at home prior to coming to the workplace. It may be something that occurs as a result of the day's activities or the entire trip sequence activities. This may be the fourth day of a 4-day trip, and we've had a lot of weather irregularities. We've had passenger problems. Perhaps we had mechanical problems with the airplane. All of these things add up. Often there are times to address it. Often there are times to turn it around, and that may require the input, the assistance of another crew member.
A major aspect of United's program was the development of CLR training in the loft. Loft is line-oriented flight training and is completed in the simulators. During this period, a crew member is briefed on an aspect of CLR, decision-making or communication or leadership or use of resources, something along that line. Then they fly a scenario that is line-oriented, where they fly from one city to the next in the simulator. And during this 2-hour period, they're given scenarios which will help them to practice CLR skills. At the conclusion of the simulator session, there's then an opportunity to view this videotaped session and discuss and critique what happened and learn the lessons as they see their own performance in the cockpit.
To teach the tools utilized in CLR, we specifically start academically by defining skills that we see, observable skills in CLR, and then showing videos and such, and we debrief the videos. We have the students debrief the videos and see what they see, and see it as an observable behavior, a physical behavior that can be recognized. After that, they go to the 3-day seminar, and during the seminar, they interact with each other and set up in a cockpit environment with scenarios. They practice these skills.
In the seminar, we take advantage of situations that have truly happened out on the line experience. We take it from line pilots, and by that I mean people that are flying day-to-day, A to B, and they send in certain situations, and we recreate them or we dramatize them sometimes in videos. We put them down on paper and give them to the different students, and then we ask them to identify certain styles of operation in these particular situations. And actually we ask them to play parts in certain cockpit experiments, and asking them to play the role of a particular style of operation, and then maybe we'll have one of the people in the cockpit, we'll ask them to do what they would normally do without playing a role, and to solve or fix this particular situation, and we've taken the situations from the line.
People are in the seminar with their peers, and their peers are encouraged to give direct, open, forthright, candid feedback on how people are operating, how their input is received by the rest of the group. And often we don't see ourselves accurately. We don't picture ourselves operating as other people see us operating. The mirror we hold up to ourselves is not accurate. But when we get input from other people as to how we're coming across, that increased level of awareness, now we see how we're really impacting flight operations, impacting what goes on in the cockpit.
Some of the barriers to effective communication may come from the feeling that what you have to say, what you know, might not be correct. People are scared to speak up for fear they will look bad. We find that with some new hires, and actually not just new hires, people when they're new on an airplane. You're now sitting next to a captain who has more experience than you on that piece of equipment. People tend to be reluctant to speak up for fear that they will look stupid. People need to get over that fear and to understand they're thoroughly qualified and trained on the piece of equipment, and that their input is vitally important.
In our advanced airplanes with our glass cockpits, it's a two-sided benefit and problem. The benefit is you have a lot of information, a lot of good information. The hard part is prioritizing that information and seeing what's relevant. The hard part about that is communication has to increase between the pilots, because oftentimes, and as example would be the A320, since it's fly-by-wire, when they control a stick, when the first officer moves a stick, the captain cannot feel it. And then you have to tell the other pilot. Since he doesn't know you're making a left-hand turn, if he doesn't think it's appropriate, he may think it's the airplane doing it by itself, because of the automated systems. And so you say, well, I'm turning left, clear left, or whatever it may be. So the communication skills have to increase drastically.
One type of incident that is still occurring today, and it's probably every pilot's worst nightmare. We're on a multi-engine airplane, and we have an engine failure. And we reach up during the procedure, and we shut down the good engine. This has happened for years and years. It happened 40 years ago, and it's still happening today. We've defined the wrong problem. And if there are two pilots in the cockpit, if there's one pilot in the cockpit, defining the problem and defining it accurately is essential in solving the problem.
One of the keys, I think, to problem definition when we speak about recognizing the problem, we need to recognize correctly what the problem is. And at times, people have assessed the situation and thought the problem was something else, then it wasn't. I think a way to alleviate that is to make sure that all crew members aren't all focused on the one thing. That's how come when we deal with problems and emergencies, someone is always flying the airplane. Someone always is. The other person is concentrating on the problem. Well, you don't want all the crew members concentrating on one thing, because then who is overseeing the entire picture? Someone needs to step back and continually watch the whole picture.
When a problem exists, you can either take it as a single event or a far-reaching event. If you take it as a single event, the problem is that it may affect something else which you don't want to occur. So when you look at a problem, you define it. You take, if there's an immediate action, a fire or such, you take care of the problem immediately so that it doesn't do undue jeopardy to the airplane. And then after that, you discuss it and find how does this affect me in landing safely, and where should we be going to land at this point.
We have role-playing exercises we use in some of our courses where the captain is faced, or the pilot playing the captain's role is faced with a dilemma. It can be something which is requires urgent decision-making, timely action to be taken. It may be something where time and risk are at a much lower level, much less urgency. But there's always a critique of what that pilot has decided to do and how they've arrived at having made a decision. The decision-making process is critiqued, the action taken is critiqued.
And pilots don't like to ask for a lot of help, and I ask a specific question about fighter pilots, and these are usually one-person aircraft. And I ask them to raise their hands and tell me, how can CLR, could it possibly be used in a one-person cockpit? How could that be? And a lot of them will say, no, it really can't be. So then I'll ask them about a situation on a go-around or a missed approach. How many people have actually landed when they should have gone around in a fighter plane or a single-seater or just a small general aviation? And what caused them to land when they knew inside and in their heart that they should go around? And it's usually pride. It's usually thinking about what their other people on the aircraft carrier are going to think about them for going around, or the other pilots on the ground in a military situation, or just general aviation. There's a lot of pride involved. We do things for that very reason as pilots. And this course teaches you, or at least strives to teach you, that that's not the right thing to do.
We continually cover accidents because we all learn from accidents. We learn from our past. We learn from our experience. The accidents help us to recognize what the crews did or did not do, how effective were they in their problem solving, what can we do differently, what can we learn from this.
In most accidents, the accident has not been caused by a single event. It's caused by a series of events. One example of a single event incident was United's Flight 232 in Sioux City, the DC-10, had a single catastrophic failure. Contrast that to another incident where there may have been a very subtle failure that had gone unnoticed, but there were other clues that something was wrong, and the crew didn't pick up on those clues or didn't investigate them deeply enough to identify what had failed. And then something else happens, and it may not happen on the airplane. It may be a weather problem to where we're now shooting an approach in marginal weather. But the component that failed on the airplane and had gone unnoticed by the crew was a component, an instrument, a system, something that you would really like to have working for you in a low visibility approach. So now you're shooting the approach or beginning to shoot the approach, and something else goes wrong. And nothing else has been addressed along the way. It may turn out that having addressed any one of those little links in the error chain would have prevented the incident or accident from having occurred.
We plan ahead, just like anybody, from the lightest plane Cessna driver to a jumbo jet 47-400 would do. It relieves the workload for us a lot later. If we're going into Los Angeles, for example, to heavy weather, we know the workload's going to be up there. So anything we can do ahead of time, diversion airport, missed approach procedures, maintenance frequencies, we have everything ready available. We don't have to do that at the last minute. It's already done. It relieves the workload for us, makes it easier in the long run. And you can do that in just any phase of aviation, not just airliners.
We know that the workload can be incredible. In normal operations, sometimes the workload is not as high. In an irregular situation or in an emergency situation, the workload can be overwhelming.
And we'll see this in the simulator oftentimes when we saturate them, we give them a number of emergencies, and they have to work through them, work through the checklist, and come to a positive conclusion. The thing is, stop. I have too much. Take it one step at a time, whether you have to hold, if you have the fuel to hold, or take another course of action.
I think situational awareness not only covers where the airplane is physically in space, I think situational awareness covers where we are as pilots in our duties in the cockpit, this task that we're trying to achieve from point A to B safely.
We tend to focus on things. We tend to narrow our focus. We tend to mishear or not hear items. We tend to miss cues and clues and input that's coming our way constantly. How we handle that can be very instructional, very educational. Better ways to handle that can be brought to our attention. We can learn to recognize when we start to focus in on things. And we may get into something where just by increased level of awareness, by any one member of the crew, perhaps by the entire crew as a whole, could lead to a more effectively functioning crew.
The Florida Everglades with Flight 401, and they were involved, all three pilots, in a light bulb for the landing gear, rather than maybe one person flying the airplane, the other two working on the problem. This is a long time ago. This is pre-CLR also. And they ended up crashing that great big jumbo jet, and a lot of fatalities in that thing. That was situational awareness. Where were they? What were they doing? They were not aware of the situation. They were aware that they had a problem, but not the overall situation.
Resource management means getting all the relevant information available to you, both from inside the cockpit and outside the cockpit.
We teach the pilots to use their resources on a daily A to B situation where there's not really any problems. For example, a flight from Paris to Los Angeles, we constantly updating our alternate weather, our winds ahead of time, pilot reports from aircraft that are ahead of us. We have special frequencies that we use. We can talk to our dispatch to check weather, to check just about anything we need to check along the route.
I was just listening to a training tape about, it was a general aviation pilot somewhere in the Northeast who was not instrument rated, was in the clouds, completely disoriented. If the pilot had used no resources, had never keyed the mic, had never made his problem known, had never used any other resources, probably would have crashed. The airplane would have been destroyed, lives would have been lost. But there was a tremendous amount of assistance that was given by not only ATC, but another commercial airline. There was a Delta flight crew that was also giving basically flight instruction to this individual. Keep the nose up, pull back on the power, asking this individual questions such as, what is your airspeed right now? The pilot had no visual reference. If these other resources had not been used, the results very likely would have been disastrous. The pilot landed safely, airplane was not scratched, and nobody was hurt. I think there was a good outcome to this incident because of very effective use of resources.
The number of resources to be used should always be addressed academically. First of all, what are your resources? You need to be made aware of that these are possible resources. Then we oftentimes, the first thing we will do is show a video of Flight 232, which is a crash into Sioux City, Iowa, and we ask, well, what resources did they use? And they go through air traffic control, they use individuals, they use their manuals, they use emergency support, which is our systems area maintenance, SAM, and also our dispatch control. And not only that, they use passengers to evaluate what they had. Our passengers are business flyers that fly out thousands and thousands of miles, and they're very familiar with the sounds and sights in the back of an airplane.
One of the best known examples of effective CLR is United Airlines Flight 232, which everyone knows about. That was a DC-10. It was United Airlines DC-10. It was a CLR-trained United Airlines DC-10 crew that handled that. The effective use of CLR contributed to the saving of many lives. There were lives lost, but the effective use of CLR helped save lives and bring that airplane down to the ground in as safe a manner as possible.
United 232, this is Sam. Sam, United 232, we blew a number 2 engine and we've lost all hydraulics and we are only able to control level flight with the asymmetrical power setting. We have very little rudder or elevator. The United 232, understand that you lost number 2 engine totally, sir? Positive.
I think our CLR training that we had was very effective because it put all 3 of us in a loop, and I'm not excluding Dudley, I'm talking about now how we handle the airplane. All 4 of us were working together in our communications and so forth, but in actually controlling the aircraft with the 3 of us, the CLR gave us all talking at the same time, all planning what we're trying to do, all thinking out loud is basically what it amounted to. And I think that was a very important part of getting the airplane down as safely as we did. And I am thoroughly convinced that by having the training that we had in our CLR, it put us all in a situation where we felt our input was important.
We feel we have a good record. Since 1978, we have not had a passenger fatality related to a human factors or caused by a human factors accident. Our last human factors caused accident was in 1984. We know that's an enviable record, but we're very, very much aware that we need to continue to maintain vigilance. We are aware of human factors incidents that happen, and as those incidents come up, we try to address them. We revise training, incorporate new methods and new information to make sure that we address those incidents. It's great to be a good stick, but it's better to be a safe pilot, effective and efficient.
I think for the airlines, CRM has been extremely effective, and I think that can be as effective with general aviation. Once we've tailored it to general aviation, the concepts that you learn in CRM are just as applicable to general aviation. I've been an instructor for many years. I've been a crew member on a Learjet in an air ambulance situation, and in both environments, I was able to apply what I've learned with CRM. I think that an instructor who may not be entirely sure about how those concepts apply to a general aviation type environment needs to go out and educate themselves. There's publications, there's programs that they can enroll in that will give them CRM training, and once they've seen those concepts, I think it becomes obvious how extremely important they can be to general aviation and how they can help to prevent human factors accidents. I think most instructors approach CRM as simply cockpit organization, and yet there's so many more concepts that can be applied to GA. For instance, risk assessment, decision making, workload management, and a lot of other concepts that all go together on CRM. And I think it's also important, and something I definitely try to do with my students, is to start from day one with CRM training, not leave it until the very last thing I teach a student, or maybe miss it altogether. I think also you can apply to every student you have, from private, instrument, commercial, multi-engine, ATP. Those concepts apply to every one of those students and should be taught to all of them, regardless of their level of training. I think as instructors, we need to start evaluating our students on an additional level. We often will critique on a technical side, but we leave out the CRM or human factor side of a lesson. For instance, I want to be able to evaluate students on situational awareness, risk assessment, did they use all their resources, etc. If I'm doing a lesson, for instance, on crosswind landings, in the lesson objective, certainly we'll discuss the technical aspects of landing the airplane, but I'm also going to give them a specific CRM concept to work on, for instance, situational awareness. So after the flight, I can evaluate them on their landing. How well did they land the airplane and so on, but I'm also going to discuss, were they aware of where they were in the pattern? Did they know that another airplane had cut them off in the pattern? In other words, the situational awareness. During the course of training with my students, I like to discuss the resources they have available to them even when they're flying by themselves. For instance, they can always talk to ATC, flight service stations, maybe even maintenance personnel. Additionally, they also will always have the checklists and the airplane manuals aboard the airplane. During an emergency, they can use those to help them alleviate some of the workload. Another valuable resource a pilot has are their own skills and knowledge. One of the failings I have seen, though, as an instructor is a pilot may not know how to use all the equipment they have on their airplane. So the GPS, the LORAN, perhaps the autopilot they have is worthless because they don't know how to use it. All of that equipment can be very helpful and alleviate the workload a pilot can experience during a flight, especially on an instrument flight, for instance. It's important, however, not to become over-reliant on the equipment and lose your situational awareness. As a general aviation pilot, you'll often have passengers with you. That can be a very valuable resource if you use it properly. For instance, during the passenger briefing, let them know that you're more than willing to listen to them if they hear an unusual sound, if they think there may be something wrong, or just to help you find traffic in the pattern or as you're flying along. A passenger that is really familiar with flying and flies quite a bit can really be a valuable resource. Communication is one of the important concepts of CRM training. Without good communication, you're nowhere. So I think it's very important with my students that from the beginning of their training, I try to eliminate the intimidation factor that can break down good communication. I think instructors unknowingly can intimidate their students, and often do. The way I can get past this is to tell them from the beginning, if you're uncomfortable with something, or you think there might be something wrong, let me know right away. I'm more than willing to discuss it with you, and I'm human. I do make mistakes. Maybe I haven't even realized that there's something wrong. Many flights we do in general aviation, you do it with another pilot. You like to split expenses with them. You have friends that are pilots. So, and even as an instructor with a student, what I teach my students is in their pre-flight briefing as a regular thing is to discuss with another pilot who's going to be doing what, who's responsible for the radio communications, for instance, or the navigation, so that that coordination begins in the pre-flight briefing rather than during the flight. One thing I teach for effective crew environment, a technique I like to use, is that I play the co-pilot with my student. I'll have them give me a job to do, whether that be, I want you to use the radio today and do my communications. I'm really busy trying to get my approach set up, for instance. Or another really good way of using the crew coordination concept is to get two, for instance, instrument students together. They're both rated in the airplane, and I'll sit in the back, and I'll see how do they coordinate with one another. And then in the post-flight briefing, we can critique how that coordination went. I like to introduce my students to the decision-making process by evaluating old NTSB accident reports. Certainly we can never know exactly why a pilot made this or that decision, but by looking at the chain of events that led up to it, we can make some suppositions that allow us to maybe get into the pilot's head a little bit and thereby introduce some of the decisions they made. I think I want to be cautious when I look through accident reports. I certainly don't want to scare my student with the downside of aviation, but it certainly is a part of aviation, and what we can do is present it in the light of we can learn from these old accidents and thereby hopefully prevent them in the future. One of the accident scenarios I like to evaluate with my students is one that I was aware of because it occurred at the airport I fly out of. A gentleman was flying up from Texas and ran out of fuel literally on short final and was killed, and several passengers were also killed when he crashed the airplane. The chain of events that led up to this accident is something I like to discuss with a student. For instance, why did he overfly several airports on the way to the destination and not stop for fuel? He accepted from the tower and extended downwind rather than explaining to them, I'm low on fuel, I need to land. He must have been on fumes by the time he turned base to final, and yet again, he didn't say anything. Maybe he was too proud to admit I made an error in my fuel management, or he was worried about the consequences of declaring an emergency. These are the kind of human factors accidents that are easily preventable using cockpit resource management training. During the course of training with a student, I like to have one lesson that deals with the overall CRM concepts. I can do this in an airplane or a simulator, but either way I want to give them a scenario that tests their ability to make decisions. For instance, I will give them in the pre-flight briefing specific weather at an airport. Then after they take off, I'll fail their number one VOR, which removes the glide slope, so they can't do the ILS when they get to that airport. Now they have to assess, how will that affect my flight? Can I still get to my destination? Shoot the VOR approach, go missed, go to another airport? Will I have enough fuel to do that? I also may throw another emergency in to test their ability to handle the workload and to prioritize what they need to do. Then during the post-flight briefing, we can discuss how did they decide to do that and why did they decide to do that? What was the motivating factor? Could they have made a better decision? Approximately 80% of all general aviation accidents are pilot error. How many accidents could we prevent with human factors training? It's time to follow the lead of the airlines and change the way we think about flight training.